Welcome to Her Hoop Stat. I am Helen Williams, and I am here today with my colleague from across the water, Richard Cohen. Richard, it's 7 o'clock in the morning for me here. What time is it where you are? You can tell from the scratchy in my voice.
Just past noon. So yeah, you got me up early too, but only because early is unusual for me. Yeah,
Yes, I forget you watch all of the WNBA, and it is on in an insane hour for you over there in London.
yeah, yeah. The exciting game last night finished sometime around 5 a.m. But yeah, something like that.
Okay, so you got at least 6 hours of sleep, just
I
like I
got a
did.
little
So
bit. Yeah.
there you go. There you go. Well, before we get started, I wanted to give Debbie Antonelli kudos for her marathon of free throws. I was just asking DMAC off camera before we started if she actually stayed up for the whole 24 hours. And kudos to you, Debbie. Just the power of women. Just shoots free throws every hour, walks around, talks to folks, and very impressive and raised a lot of money for her cause. So kudos to Debbie Antonelli, and whatever rest you're getting right now, you totally deserve. So,
Absolutely. And shoots 96% as well, which is ridiculous.
that's just ridiculous. I mean, I saw the whiteboard with the numbers every hour, and just yeah. Again, kudos to her, the power of women. Um, so let's talk about it's been almost a week since the WNBA started. Anything that caught your eye from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday?
I mean, I think the big topic has been the officiating and all of the fouls that are being called, unfortunately, rather than the actual basketball. It was maybe the most predictable topic that you could possibly imagine after what we saw in preseason and the clear
Yeah,
reaction to everything from last year. I'm a lot less unhappy with it than a lot of other people are. This to me is a reasonable way to make the league adjust. You have to overcorrect. You make the players and the teams react to that overcorrection, and then everyone meets somewhere in the middle. The refs sort of start to ease up a little bit. The players ease up on the contact. So hopefully you end up with a happy medium somewhere between where we were last year and where the officials have started with this year. But yeah, for a while, maybe you have to put up with games that go on longer than you'd want them to and that have an awful lot more stoppages than you'd want them to. But yeah, I don't have a huge problem with how they've started out, to be honest.
yeah, it's all about freedom of movement.
Yeah,
We don't want a whole bunch of chucking across the lane and out on the perimeter, and that would slow the game down too. So yeah, I'm totally in agreement with that. I mean, I thought the games were good. My sense is I'm not going to overcorrect on any team right now. That's what
yeah,
I got out of the week because a lot of teams don't have their folks, all their folks, right? Like Seattle doesn't have Awa Fam. I'm not sure when she finishes in Spain. And New York doesn't have, an SQ, and some people aren't they're playing some development players. So I don't want to overcorrect in my assessment of teams from just the first week.
yeah. It's the start of May, and we're playing a 44 game regular season, and Americans don't tend to like when I say it, but it's also essentially a 44 game preseason because the games that actually matter are the playoffs. So all we're deciding for the first 4 months are the seeding for the games that actually matter. So yeah, this is these are not hugely impactful games. They'll count in the standings in the end, but yeah, we're just we're it's the early punches in a long fight.
One thing I will just go out on a limb right now, though, and say is that Olivia Miles is going to make the All Star team. I mean, just watching her with Minnesota, you can tell that they need her on the floor, especially Courtney Williams. I know she's happy she doesn't have to play point guard anymore, but just watching her decision to go to TCU, Pick and Roll University, was a great decision, even though people didn't understand it. And I think it totally got her ready, along with her natural skill and her basketball IQ, to play in the pros. I think she's going to be a fabulous player.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying how much I wanted to watch her as a pro for what 3 years. She was eligible to declare for the WNBA a lot earlier than she did, and stuck around in college to get that sort of further education. Um, yeah, she's a wonderful player. She's so creative. I mean, I posted the other day. She makes watching basketball more fun, and that's as a fan, as a viewer, that's what it comes down to. We want to enjoy watching these games as much as possible, and her creativity on the court just makes it more fun to watch basketball. And yeah, and she's the perfect player for an all-star game as well. Whether she actually deserves to be there or not, she would make the all-star game more entertaining to watch. In the same way that, back in the day, I think it was Bill Simmons, although women's basketball fans don't like to talk about Bill Simmons because he's been pretty dismissive of our game over the years, but used to say that I think it was Jason Williams ought to be just invited to the All-Star game every year, regardless of whether he deserved it or should be there at all, because you need these players to make the games worth watching. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, Miles may well deserve it anyway as a player, but regardless, invite her, make it fun.
I think she's going to end up deserving it. The one thing I will be picky about as a coach is I do see, and it's on. Let me just preface this again. It's only been 2 games, right?
Yeah,
But
everything here is small sample size.
yeah,
Absolutely.
small sample size. But I do see people going under the screens for her, so she's gonna have to make some of those 3 point shots. She's not a terrible 3 point shooter, but she's definitely gonna have to make some of those shots. But just in terms of Minnesota overall, watching them, what are your thoughts on them without Nafisa Collier? Because I feel like Courtney Williams and Olivia Miles and Kayla McBride are just kind of their three that really need to be consistent with having good games. And then I'm not quite sure everybody else is sort of by committee. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, given what they're missing, I've been pretty impressed that they easily could have won both games they've played so far, rather than just the one. Easily could have held on to beat Atlanta in the first game. Nia Coffey looks like a perfect fit for a Cheryl Reeve team. She's going to absolutely work her tail off every game. You're going to get the sort of hustle plays that you used to get from Bridget Carlton, even though it's a different position she's playing. She's more at the 4 than the 3 for Carlton. Natasha Howard looks like she's fit right in. Obviously they're missing their star, but this is Reeve teams are usually more than the sum of their parts. That
Yeah.
she gets these teams to play to a certain level, regardless of who you actually gave her to coach. Mike Tebow used to do the same thing in Washington. That whatever roster you gave him, you couldn't really tank because the team was going to win 15, 20 games, whether you wanted them to or not, whoever was on the roster. And yeah, I think we're seeing, a bunch of European invites that, a lot of people may not have heard of around the league, but including in Minnesota, where they've got a whole European cast. And yeah, I think they're doing pretty well with what are a load of new pieces in a lot of cases. So they're still building their chemistry. And this is a team that has been built on chemistry as much as the talent.
Yeah, you can never count out a Cheryl Reeve team. I don't care I don't care if I was playing for they they'd still be fine. But that's a great segue to in terms of foreign players to I want to talk about Phoenix a little bit. I watched them play last night, and there are 2 players that, to be honest with you, this is the first time I saw Phoenix play. I've never heard of them, but I was very impressed with both of them. One was Giovanna Nokic, and the other was Kiara Linskens. Linskens, I think, is from Belgium. No, Nokic is from Serbia. What are your thoughts on those two? And in terms of, I do have to give Phoenix kudos too because I'm never going to count them out. Their scouting department in Europe is phenomenal. I mean, they find people that are talented, no matter how old they are, that we haven't heard of here in America, and they're always good.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it last year when they brought in a lot of people that, including Americans who'd sort of gone overseas, been forgotten about by the WNBA sort of populace, and made careers for themselves in Europe. And then Phoenix have seen enough in them to give them a chance back in the US. But yeah, Linskens is a big center who has shooting range. She plays the 5 next to Emma Meesman for Belgium, has for several years now. Nogic is even more experienced, plays for Serbia. I think was in college in the US, so also has, isn't just going to isn't completely new to the US environment, which can sometimes be sort of hard to adapt to as a foreign player coming over for the first time. We've seen players sometimes struggle to adapt. I think it's easier if you have that history. Yeah, I wasn't expecting Nogic to be this good. In my mind, she was, especially for Serbia, she's sort of part of a collective in that, you might get one game where you get 18 points from her, but there'll be another where you get 4 in the next game and barely notice she was out there. I was impressed. I mean, they essentially used her as a point guard. I've never seen her play that position before for Serbia. And then last night they came out with a Yai in the starting lineup instead of her, and that lineup for Phoenix is enormous. They're barely the smallest player on the court is Kalia Copper, and yeah, ultimately, it has its drawbacks as well because Miles started to go past IIE in the second half, especially because if you put that much size on the court, you're also usually giving up some quickness, and the smaller players won't be able to guard anyone you've got out there, but they'll probably be able to go past them. So yeah, we're going to see what Phoenix can do over the rest of the year. They're obviously waiting for McCarney to show up as well, so that'll give them even more options.
Yeah, I that's another team that I'm just not going to count out. I don't know that they have it to, get all the way to the finals, but kudos to Dewana Bonner. Is this year 17 for her, and boy, I don't know what
And
she does
still
in her
playing.
off-season regiment, but she's still effective.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, I don't want to be doing it because whatever you need to do to be ready for a professional basketball season at that age, yeah, LeBron talks about it. Everything he has to put his body through in the off season is what might make you retire because that's the stuff you don't want to do. Playing the games is fine. It's the rest of the things you have to go through to get your body ready to play the games. So yeah, it's impressive. It's amazing she's still doing it, and she's usually healthy most of the season as well. Unlike
Yeah, that's the thing.
what we see with lots of vets normally are breaking down a lot more once they get into their sort of mid-30s. So yeah, she's around, usually available most games.
She's got to write a book on her off-season regimen. So I did not stay up for the whole game, but Portland and Sarah Ashley Barker. Let's talk about her and the shot.
Yeah, I mean that was a hell of a finish, a hell of a way to get your first win as a reborn franchise. You're beating one of the storied teams that won a championship only a couple of years ago. You're doing it at home. You're doing it with a last second shot. That was picture perfect for the Fire.
Yeah, well, that's what she does, though. She did that in the NCAA tournament and almost got to the Elite Eight. So I've always been very impressed with her and anybody that has her. But Portland's another team that has a lot of foreign players. Anybody really catch your eye with them?
I'm a big fan of Louisa Geiselsoda, who's come over from Dallas. I was a little surprised that they left her unprotected in the expansion draft. She, another big center that can shoot like Linskin's in Phoenix. In terms of the real youngsters that we don't know what they're going to be when they develop, you've still got Carla Late in now. Now with the third team in the WNBA that's owned her rights, and all we see her do is, constantly attacking, constantly trying to go past people, trying to score at the rim. I don't, I don't think she's really a point guard. I think she's a scoring guard who stopped growing. So teams therefore make her play the point guard. Um, but she's a lot of fun to watch, and when she has these good games, she can be incredibly effective. I think you have to pick and choose. One of those players that you need to sit when it isn't working on the right night, but when it is working, you leave her out there and let her go to work. And then you got Nadia Pock as well, the Australian, who they're using in sort of some interesting ways. They're kind of using her as a primary defender. She started the first game defending the point guard, and then started last night defending Brianna Stewart. So Portland are trying to do some interesting things defensively in general. That there's lots of trapping, lots of really aggressive defense, and that can get you caught out, especially in the early stages when you may not have that much chemistry as a defense yet. Because these players, some of them only met each other last week, so yeah,
Yeah.
this is all new for them as well as sort of the other teams that are coming out.
Well, speaking of chemistry, I was impressed with Dallas, and let me shout out Kurt Miller. Yeah, you rectified that mistake. Just based on these first couple of games, you rectified the mistake you made the last couple of years with coaching with that staff. And I just feel like with Jose Fernandez, they are playing more free. I know they didn't win the other night, but I just feel like they're playing more free and their spacing's good. It looks like people know what they're doing. It looks like they know where they're supposed to be. It doesn't always work, but it at least looks like they have some idea of what's going on. And I didn't see that in the past.
Yeah, I think part of that is the players that Miller went out and got as well. You get veteran posts like Alana Smith and Jessica Shepherd who know whatever the system is, they know what they should be doing out on the court on any given possession. And you get the basics right, then you can freelance with the sort of stuff that Paige and Enrique can create themselves on the ball. So yeah, you get the basics right, and then you can go from there and break out into whatever you need to do to create on offense. So yeah, I think they've looked pretty. I think everyone's expecting them to look a lot better this year, and the question is how much better. And yeah, we've seen some good signs. I think, especially with Enrique, who I was concerned about how she was going to fit in on a team that isn't as much just hers as it used to be. That they need her to be an offensive weapon without just taking over and controlling the ball every time down the floor and not letting anyone else get involved. I think we saw a little bit too much of that last night, maybe, but that was because the offense wasn't working. So she thought, right, if nothing else is working, I'm going to see what I can
Why
do.
not? Yeah.
Yes, which was fair enough with the way it was going. Becca's kind of drifted out of the game a little bit, so yeah, she felt like she needed to take over. But yeah, I think largely speaking, we've seen her fitting in quite well in the first couple of games.
Yeah, I do think Minnesota's going to miss Jessica Shepard. And who was the other one? I just lost my Bridget Carlson.
Yeah.
Because of their versatility, Carlton on both ends of the floor, Shepard with her passing, and she just always seems to be in the right place, for offensive rebounds. So those were huge pickups, I think, for Dallas.
I Carlton's in Portland, but
I'm
the
not
other
Cartman.
Alana
Jesus.
Smith is the other
Alana
pickup
Smith.
in
Sorry,
Dallas.
sorry,
Yeah.
Alana and Bridget. I know who you are. I know who you are. Uh,
I mean, it applies for Carlton as well. They're talking about the same kind of plays. This is why, Minnesota managing to stay as good as they've been, still looking pretty good in the opening couple of games has been impressive because of all of the pieces that they've lost. But yeah, I mean, you're bringing in players who have some inbuilt chemistry because they brought in Shepherd and Smith together.
yeah.
So they were maybe not on the floor together that much last year because obviously Collier's usually out there, so those two weren't playing together much in Minnesota. But they spent the whole year in practice together. They know everything, in terms of how one's going to react on possessions. So yeah, you've got a post pairing out there who already know what's going to happen and how one's going to rotate and the other's going to help into the same sort of space.
So one other team I just want to touch on is Indiana, and obviously their game against Dallas was awesome, and of course all their fans think they're going to win the championship off of just 2 games. But I was impressed with their offense, but where I'm concerned about them and have been is just their defense. Like they I went back at her hoop stats, kind of being nerdy, and I looked at their defensive field goal percentage against that they gave up for opponents. 3-point field goals, 32.9, which is basically 33%, which from three is basically like 50% from two. And then exactly 50% for two. So their effective field goal percentage last year for opponents was 50%. That's not going to win you a championship. So we look at these games and it's a bit of a misnomer because you always see them, in the game at the end and they have, a shot to win it. But because of their defense, they shouldn't be in that position to begin with. So I'm not saying that they're not going to get to the championship game, but it's going to be tough to win if you give up as much as they do.
Yeah, and I think Steph White would agree with you that that they know they're always going to score. You've got players like Boston, Mitchell, Clark that you can just toss the ball to, and you're going to have a half decent offense regardless of what you're running. And yeah, it's going to come down to whether they can stop people. That when you've got Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell as your backcourt, you're giving up size. You're not, neither of those players are famed for their defense. So you kind of have to build as a team. That's part of why Sophie Cunningham's out there as a three. Why Lexi Hull plays quite a lot as well. You need some level of perimeter defense so that you're not constantly relying on the people behind them. But yeah, I agree with you. You're going to have to build some kind of basis on defense that is going to allow you to win games when it comes down to the crunch. Not just pile up wins in a regular season because they'll
Right.
outscore a lot of people regardless. But yeah, you have to build that for the real games that matter at the end of the year and when everything gets tight and slows down.
Are there any stats over the league that sort of caught your eye in this first week?
I I think most of what we've seen is just the numbers evening out, and it'll take a while for everything to even. The first 10 games, the home teams went 1-9, which was a surprising number to jump out, but I think that's just randomness. That's part of the schedule playing out. We've obviously, as we talked about, got a lot more fouls being called, and therefore a lot more free throws being shot. How that affects scoring, I think we'll have to wait and see as that evens out. Otherwise, I think most of the numbers, even with the limited number of games we've seen so far, are relatively, not far off what you expect on the basis of previous years.
Well, I'm looking forward to tonight's games, and the one that I'm definitely going to watch is the Chicago Sky versus Golden State. I watched Chicago, and last week I said I'm just not judging. I'm just wondering, and it wasn't bad. I still need a bigger sample size, but it wasn't terrible. And obviously, you look at Golden State. Golden State, the addition of Gabby Williams, who, by the way, she and Zaya Cook from Seattle are, I think, the two best just pure athletes in the league. I mean, they are unbelievable. So, and I'm so happy to see Zaya Cook, getting an opportunity. But that's going to be a really good game. The Golden State Valkyries and the Chicago Sky. What do you think? And what games are you looking forward to?
I mean, with Chicago, unfortunately it's not happening tonight. I mean, Cloud is listed as questionable, so they might be getting one piece back. But what we're waiting for with Chicago, I think, is to see what they're going to look like when they're whole. Because, like you were
Yeah,
talking about earlier on, there are so many teams missing pieces in these sort of early stages. And Chicago, I think you want to see what they're going to look like when Stevens is available, when Carrington's available, even when Vandersloot gets back healthy. This team is going to be even more interesting once we actually see what they look like with all their pieces intact. But also, until then, what they might look like with Cloud, because they look short-handed when you got to sort of play Sheldon as many minutes, and
yeah.
you're asking Banham to play point guard, which she doesn't really want to do. So, yeah, they're going to be more interesting once they're intact. And Golden State continue to be a very fun team. I'm still concerned about what they're going to do in the middle, in the paint, without
Yeah,
repair.
me
You know,
too.
you're relying on Stokes and Ami here, and that's it in terms of real posts on the roster. So, yeah, I want to see what they look like when they play teams. I mean, we're going to see it a bit tonight against Chicago when they have to try and guard Cardoso, and we'll see what happens with that, because that probably means you have to play Stokes more than you would in other games, because somebody's got to guard her and somebody's got to survive in there in the paint and try and rebound against her. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. And Jasice's season is over overseas as well, so imagine she'll be joining up with Golden State soon, and we get to see what she can look like to add to this cadre of European players all around the league.
We're gonna have to change the name of the league with all the European players. Yeah, and speaking of a me here, this is totally off the subject, but I went and I was just interested in South Carolina, and they have 10 players that are in the pros right now at the same time. I mean, they've got Aaliyah Boston, Zaya Cook, uh, obviously Wilson, Ty Harris, Cardosa, Amihir, Pau Pau, Tiffany Mitchell, and Alicia Gray. Excuse me, pronounce that correctly. Alicia Gray. That is phenomenal for one program at the same time.
I mean, that's what we normally see from UConn, right? I imagine they're up there in those numbers as well.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah, that's what Dawn Staley's built with that program, is that they're now a UConn competitor, and you see that in the NCAA results and in terms of what she's producing for the pros. You know, these. I mean, I think with UConn, the the thing that coaches in the pros always used to like about them, and probably still do, is that they're pro ready, even if
yeah,
however much they might still have left to develop in the pro game, they come out of college and they're ready to play immediately. So I think we're seeing similar things with South Carolina as well. I mean, Pau Pau dropped last year in the draft far much further than she would if we redrafted that class now. You know,
yeah.
she's not falling to the second round anymore. And yeah, people may be learning that this is a similar thing to UConn now. You can take these players and expect them to be ready.
So you're either going to UConn or you're either going to South Carolina if you're a top
I'm
player.
if they've got any room on the roster, yeah. But yeah, it's probably pretty hard to get in there these days, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right. Well, any other thoughts on any upcoming this week?
I think we covered most of it. I imagine uh, we're going to keep hearing things about all of the fouls. We're going to keep hearing things about the officiating. I hope that starts to ease up. I felt like it did a little bit last night. The problem is, if the refs are going to start easing back, then it's going to happen unevenly, unfortunately. So you're going to get one game where stuff starts getting called a little less tight, and one where we still saw games last night with 50 fouls in them. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the play. But this is all still small sample size, early games. No need to panic over anything yet. And yeah, we'll see how it plays out. New York playing in Portland again later on this week could be interesting in terms of,
Yeah.
you know, have they poked the bear? Are New York going to come out and try and beat them by 40 or 50 to respond to having lost to an expansion team?
Yeah, well, Portland, great crowd too. That was
Absolutely.
part of their win. So, all right, well, my friend across the water, it is always good to spend time with you. You can go have lunch now, and I can go have breakfast. And folks, if you on your social media, we're everywhere. So wherever you get your podcasts, we're there. We're on X. We're on Spotify, YouTube, like just everywhere. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you go on our Her Hoop Stats site for a lot of really good in-depth stats, and we'll see you the next time.